A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me just first start with this memorandum. How or when did it reach DIRCO?
Look, I can't speak on behalf of DIRCO, but from the ANC point of view, is that we are very disappointed and concerned by the breach of international protocols, in particular the Geneva Convention of 1961. That's
exactly what I'm trying to establish, that breach that you speak of, what you say was outside of accepted diplomatic channels. So how did it get to that point? What exactly happened? The chain of events?
Look, what happens in this case is that in terms of the Geneva Convention, member states and nations, which are members of the United Nations, when they talk to each other, they do not use embassies to talk particularly to the head of state of a particular given country. Now, what we are saying in this case as the ANC is that it's wrong, and it smacks of generalization of us as a state, of our sovereignty, and also it's a disrespect to our president, because what we are worried about as the ANC is that this particular practice, it's wrong, and what we can say is that it will not promote proper country-to-country relations or proper government-to-government relations. We as the ANC have said we acknowledge that there is a problem of corruption in our country, and subsequent to that, through a conference resolution in Nazareth, in our last national conference, we resolved to agree that the president of the ANC, who is the president of the Republic, be instructed to establish a commission of on state capture so that we can root out corruption and all elements of corruption.
So does that mean you viewed the writ as interference?
That's complete interference, because I will tell you, there's what we call diplomatic note, where more than 20 countries can make a memo to one country to reprimand them to do the following things. Now, this we deem as interference, because normally when diplomatic notes are made, it's when you must expect the regime change or even an attack. We have seen it recently with Syria. We are now seeing it with Venezuela. Now there's a memo to us. It's a threat, because countries that we're talking about are not just ordinary countries. These are countries which formerly colonized us. They are powerful in terms of economy, in terms of arms, in terms of the army. So it's a matter that we will not take for granted as the African National Congress, because further than that is that besides being interference.
All right. Mr. Legoete, just hold the thought, because I do believe that we have DIRCO spokesperson Ndewo Mabaya on the line to take us through. They've released a statement about the matter, to take us through about the chain of events. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Can you please give us a little bit more detail about the démarche and how things unfolded?
Good evening. Yes, the Minister requested the 5 ambassadors to come to DIRCO today. The purpose of the meeting was, one, to indicate our unhappiness with the fact that the necessary international protocols were not followed in the communication. This protocol is also followed by our ambassadors across the world when they communicate in the countries that they are. The second issue was also to indicate that the issues that are in the memo are issues that we are dealing with, and these are issues that have been raised with us both by South African businesses and a number of other stakeholders. At the end of the meeting, it was agreed with the ambassadors that the fact that the necessary protocol was not followed is regretted. It was not meant to undermine the necessary protocols, and going forward, all other communications will be done in line with the international diplomatic protocols.
I'd just like to check with you, Mr. Mabai, just in terms of the wording of this memorandum. Were there words such as, we the countries which represent almost 2/3 of your FDI have concerns about this? Is that correct?
Yes, the ambassadors did indicate that the wording as it appeared in the Sunday Times, especially the parts where they quote the memorandum is correct, and it was meant to indicate the importance of the people that they represent. Indeed, they represent a number of investors. The issues that they are raising are important, and they are being attended to.
Did they indicate why the departure from normal diplomatic protocol?
You know what, it was an oversight. I don't think it was deliberate from our side. We're talking as diplomats now. We believe it was an oversight. They indicate that they were trying to contribute into the dialogue that is taking place in the country towards the investment conference, and they've been engaging with colleagues from different sectors in the country. But the bottom line is that with the benefit of hindsight, they believe that as representatives of countries, because you see, ambassadors are not ordinary people like me and you. They represent their countries, they represent their president, and with the benefit of hindsight, we all agree that following the necessary international protocol would have avoided what happened yesterday with the front page article and the stress that followed after that.
I do need to ask a question, because from the document that I've seen, there were also suggestions that these countries were unhappy with South Africa's visa or passport processes, and that they believe there should be a review thereof. Is this something that you discussed, and was there agreement on the way forward?
Yeah. Today we also get an opportunity, and we have done this more often with a number of embassies, and the minister will also be meeting after the State of the Nation with other ambassadors. Yes, the issue of visa was raised, and we must indicate the issue of visa has been raised by all our countries that comes here. The time it takes to get a visa, and we have indicated to them that there is an interministerial committee that is looking at the visa. They also indicated other issues around the rule of law, issues of governance, and we emphasize the action that is being taken by our president and by our cabinet. And we agreed that we'll continue to engage and for them to monitor what is happening in the country. There is commitment, there is action that is being taken in parastatals and in a number of other institutions. And it takes time to deal with some of these things, but we are dealing with them.
All right, thank you very much. Ndebo Mabaya is spokesperson for the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. Back to you, Dakota Legoete, who's speaking on behalf of the ANC. He seems to suggest that the untidiness, the messiness has been cleaned up. It was a mistake, in other words, but yet you were saying just before we spoke to him that you view it as interference. What would your next move as the party be then in expressing unhappiness, around this?
Look, with the recent development within the international community, this matter became serious to us as the African National Congress because of what we have seen as a call for regime change in other parts of the world. Today, there's a diplomatic note against Venezuela, where there were elections, where democratically elected government was appointed by its own citizens through voting and elections. But today, other countries issued a diplomatic note to recognize somebody who's not a product of a democratic process. And that eventually, what it will lead to is going to lead to international tension. It means other countries which stand for the recent government and others who are calling for a different government, they will have to meet there. Then what it will lead to is a civil war in that country, because countries will fight there. The country will be ruined down, just like Syria.
So what would you call for next as the ANC?
Yeah, what we'll call for is for these countries, because most of them are countries that we have worked with for over 300 years. We would not want to be treated like children of a lesser court, where these countries still want to impose themselves and interfere as slave masters in their colonies. We are no longer like that. We are now a sovereign state. We need to be respected and accorded to the respect in line with the Geneva Convention, which was adopted by nations in 1961. And that is what we are calling for. It's a juniorization of our republic for any embassy to issue an instruction to our president. It's not done even by ambassadors in those particular countries.
Having understood that, as the ANC, what are you going to call for next? Via the diplomatic channels, the conversation has been had, and it seems like those creases have been ironed out. But the ANC, you're saying that you feel undermined, you feel that there is an attempt at interference, even regime change. What salvo do you then issue?
The salvo that we're issuing is that let us respect protocols which are established by the United Nations and all multilateral institutions. That's what we are promoting as the African National Congress.
Okay.
We will not agree to any bully boy or bully girl tendencies where other nations want to impose themselves on others because of their military might, because of their economic might, and because of their colonial history of slave and master relations. We will not agree to that.
Thank you very much. Dakota Legoete is the ANC's spokesperson. In other news, too.